One moment.
There we go. Welcome, everyone. This is a Teleconferenced City Council special meeting on Monday, April 26, 2021, just as 6 p.m. I call this meeting to order and ask that if you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance as we post the flag on the Zoom. And I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would our clerk please take roll call?
Certainly. Mayor Pro Tem C.R.S.
Present.
Member Anderson.
Present.
Member Cuesta. Member Russell.
Present.
Member Ward.
Here.
Member Wink.
Present.
And Mayor Olson.
Here.
6 present and 1 absent, the absence being Member Cuesta.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 is our City Council special meeting. And this is an executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and/or instructing negotiators under C.R.S. section 24-6402 4E, particularly city attorney contract negotiations. So I move to go into this executive second. Could I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Also present at this executive session will be the following persons: Mayor Pro Tem Nathaniel Sierra, Council members Joe Anderson, Stephen Ward, Cheryl Wink, Rita Russell, HR Director Rhonda Henger, GovHR recruiters Heidi Voorhees and Charlene Stevens, and our interim city attorney representative. We have a second, so please vote.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wink.
Aye.
Mayor Olson.
Aye.
6 ayes.
Thank you. And we're going into a Teams meeting. I hope you all saw that it's not a Zoom, so you should have the link. Does anybody have trouble finding that?
I have not located it yet, but I will. I'm sure I will here in just.
It came on Friday. It came from Rhonda. Along with the materials. So
Got it.
I just want to make sure everybody's got it before I leave here.
I got it.
All right. Anybody else need help? Otherwise, we all need to leave this Zoom room. I'm assuming everybody's fine. All right, see you there.
So weird.
I think we're just missing Member Anderson, right? There, we have everybody now. And the time is now 6:51 and the executive session has been concluded. The participants in this executive session were Mayor Linda Olson, Mayor Pro Tem Nathaniel Sierra, Council members Joe Anderson, Cheryl Wink, Stephen Ward, Rita Russell, HR Director Rhonda Hanger, GovHR Recruiter Heidi Voorhees. Just a correction to the public that Charlene Stevens was not in attendance, and our interim city attorney representative, attorney Catherine Sellers. I move to close the executive session. May I have a second?
Second.
For the record, or let's vote. We'll vote first.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra?
Aye.
Member Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Mayor Olson?
Aye.
6 ayes. And can I please clarify the second?
I think that was me.
Yeah, it was Member Ward.
Thank you.
Sorry for not repeating that. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record now. Seeing none, the next agenda item is our monthly financial update. No, it's not. I'm sorry. The next action is result of the executive session, which isn't needed. It's and so the next one is selection of a DDA council representative. So tonight we need to put a city council member on the DDA, and I would like to nominate Mayor Pro Tem Nathaniel Sierra. And my reasoning for that is that he's got 2 full years ahead of him. It's his district. He's been very actively engaged in understanding the DDA, and I think he'd be a great candidate for the next 2 years. Anybody else want to be nominated? All right, well, then I think I will make a motion to approve Mayor Pro Tem Nathaniel Sierra as our DDA council representative to the Downtown Development Authority. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Ward. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, please vote.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra?
Aye.
Member Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Mayor Olson?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Thank you. So you have a new new board to go to, Mayor Pro Tem. Agenda item 5 is our monthly financial update, and our Director of Finance, Jackie Loh, is here to present and discuss any questions or concerns about the monthly finances. Welcome.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to present to you the year-to-date March financial. Let me share my screen with you. Just a second. This one.
We can see it now.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. Okay, we are 25% of fiscal year complete. At the end of March, the city's general fund receives total of 13 million revenues and are 24.8% of budgeted revenue. please review my financial narratives for the variance analysis. I want to point out that the negative investment earnings of 19,000, which is 292,000 lower than the same time last year, this is due to unrealized losses. The portfolio is adjusted to the market rate each month, depending upon the interest rate movement. And here are the year-to-date sales use tax revenues from 11 revenue sources. During COVID, the Swedish hospital does not perform as many surgeries, therefore it does not need as many medical supplies. The same applies to the manufacturing sector. However, the marketplace facilitators and the marijuana industry are performing well during COVID. And here are the sales use tax revenues collected in the past 2 months. And here's the accumulative change in sales use tax collected from March 2017 to March 2021. You may recall from last month, the total increase in the past 5 years is 6.2 million, but now it's 5.5 million. It's because we received approximately $500,000 in January 2017, which is not included in the presentation. Let's take a look at the expenditures. Expenditures year to date are 13.4 million, and also 24.7% of the fiscal year budget. The total expenditures year to date are 826,000 higher than those of 2019. This is largely due to timing from different departments. Also want to point out the fire and emergency management pays the Denver fire contract of $500,000 1 month in advance. So consider the year-to-date revenues and expenditures. The deficit, which is excess expenditures over revenue, are 427,000 compared to a 684,000 surplus in 2019. Here's the general fund balance composition. At the end of March 2020, the year-to-date deficit is 3.3 million. This includes a 3 million transfer out for capital projects and 131,000 transfer from the Public Improvement Fund. The estimated fund balance, 21.8 million. Of that, just remember, 11.6 million is committed to the one-time and additional capital projects approved by council last Monday. Last slide, next slide. Here are the year-to-date sales use collections by area. You may notice that we budgeted unearned sales tax for 2 million. These are reserved for refunds. Sometimes the companies pay the sales taxes to the wrong municipalities. And here's the appendix, including the sales tax map. Do you have any questions for the March financials? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem C.R.S.
Director Loh, thank you very much for this. Actually, it is the, I missed it on the last one, but the area map of the sales tax, what slide is that, 13? I'm kind of curious if there's some shading that is missing, basically the northwest part of the city, District 1, where we do have a lot of businesses on the other side of the plat. That's not shaded in, so I'm wondering what area they would fall under. Same thing with the area south of Oxford into, remember Cuesta's area. I think, Joe, you may actually have part of that area as well, but just basically that area that's just alongside, what is that, Windermere and basically just around those apartments. They're not shaded in, so I'm kind of curious what area they would fall under.
Yeah, here's the map. It's probably too small for you, isn't it?
No, I can take a look at it, but the whole northwest part of the city does not have a shade. No, you were at the right slot.
Okay, so your question is you want to understand what happened to area 13 and why the sales use collected so low.
No, I don't think that's area 13. Well, if it is area 13, it's not shaded in as area 13.
I don't
Yeah,
think it is
okay.
either.
I
Maybe
need
go
to
back
get,
to the map for a minute, Director Lowe, and he can point out where it is.
So if we look, yeah, so that map, Director Lowe, if you look in the top left-hand corner, that is a lot of residentials,
oh, here,
basically just south or north of Yale, basically, or north of Amherst. Everything south of that is industrial. And so that's not shaded in. So I'm kind of curious what area that would fall under.
okay. The upper left area where this is under. Okay, I'm making a note and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, and same thing around just along Santa Fe, alongside Windermere, that entire industrial area.
I mean here?
Yeah, that area.
Okay, Santa Fe and Windmere. Okay, Council Ward?
And
So
just, can I just interrupt for just a second? Sean, I don't know if you, or maybe Jade, I don't have ability to do anything right now when we came back in. And so I can't put hands down or do anything. So I don't know if I could be remade. But go ahead, Member Ward. Sorry to interrupt you. Thank you.
The question I have is, you said we could refer to the narrative to understand what looks to be 0.2% shortfall we're tracking right now versus projected revenues, because we're 25% through the year and we have 24.8% of the revenue in, which indicates a 0.2% shortfall versus projection. Typically, the city's projections for revenue are very conservative. So this is concerning to me. Can you share with me what you think this causes? I see a difference on sales and use tax primarily, but there were some other things and I didn't quite identify them when I looked through the narrative.
So are you comparing the actual to the budget or the same time last year?
Actual versus budget. I am most concerned that we are on track for our budget so that when we spend money, we know that it's there.
Yeah, if you take a look at the sales use taxes compared to the budget, we're at 25%. So I feel where the sales use tax are aligned with the budget, but compared to the same time last year, I did talk to staff. It's just very hard to project sales use tax. We may need a few more months in order to see the trend.
Okay, so on the total revenue line though, if you look at total revenues year-to-date 2021, it's 24.8% with 25% of the year done. So that to me looks like we're 0.2% behind. Is that accurate?
Yes, 0.2%, and you don't think that's good enough? You think
it's good. I think it's great. It's just concerning because it could be the sign of a lagging trend. And my question is there something we need to be aware of that we might not know of right now? Because when this happens again the next quarter, we're going to be in a worse position financially as we're making decisions for what we're going to do in 2022.
Yeah, at this juncture, I know our franchise fees are underestimated, and I know our marijuana probably will continue to grow.
All right, thank you.
Council Anderson?
Yeah, thank you, Director Lowe. The question I had was kind of following up on Member Ward's question. And I guess I know we do have some fluctuations in revenue. Do we collect? I know we collect sales tax monthly. We also collect it quarterly. And is this reflective of the first quarter sales tax from the smaller businesses that only pay quarterly, or am I misunderstanding that?
I believe we collect the property taxes from the Arapahoe County quarterly, but we collect the sales use taxes from business monthly. Okay,
only monthly, because I know there's some payers that are only annual and some that are only monthly, but I guess maybe there's not quarterly payers.
I'll double check.
Okay, because that's one way I thought maybe this shows a little bit of lag if we don't collect the quarterly sales taxes until the end of April, but maybe I'm confusing that with the state. Since I pay sales tax for my business, I'm always confused as to when they're collected quarterly and monthly, but maybe we don't do that. Thank you.
Councilmember Russell, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. So does the year-to-date sales and use tax collections by area and the amount of businesses that have closed have been more than new businesses that have opened? Is that impacting this at all?
Thank you so much. My staff and I, we did talk about this. We don't know how many business closed, but that's a possibility. Like Office Depot on Hampton.
Okay, so that, I mean, that may be something that we need to start monitoring, because we may be, COVID-19 may have impacted us greater than we realize.
Yeah, I'll definitely see how we can monitor the sales use taxes. But I just have found this chart very interesting. Yeah, you can see the comparison sales use taxes in the healthcare industry and the manufacturing industry and online business and the marijuana industry.
So in the marijuana industry, I noticed that it didn't have anything in the budget. Did we not include it in our budget revenue?
Yeah, it seems like
It's
here.
Right. See, there's nothing in the budget for marijuana.
Correct.
Is that correct? Because I thought in our general budget that we voted on, it did.
From this slide, we didn't, but I can double check.
I wonder if that's just a mistake
Okay.
on your slide.
Any questions?
Any others? I don't see any other hands up. I do have a question. So in your slide at the very, very top, you say that it's a 24. No, right there, what we're on. The same slide you're on.
Yeah.
Can you scroll it up just a little tiny bit more?
Make this bigger?
Well, it's 9.7% above the 5-year year-to-date average, but we're minus 2.1% month by month up until this point in the thing. And so what we're looking at is a change from last year to this year. But if we looked at it over a 5-year period, it's up, but maybe not up with what. And so I guess we need to compare it to expenses at this point, because are we down minus 2.1% on expenses? So we're keeping it even. I guess that's where we usually make our money up, is we just don't spend as much. I think I'm more making statements than anything else. Councilmember Ward.
So looking at the 2021 budget book, there's a note on page 22 of that says retail and medical marijuana sales tax revenue are included in the city's retail sales tax estimate.
Okay.
It was lumped
Thank
in,
you.
not a
No, we don't need to. So if that's the case, our sales use tax are under budgeted.
Okay, which I think has happened before. So, all right, that makes me feel better.
Okay, thank you for your questions, comments, especially interest in our finances.
Great. Any other questions for Director Loh? All right, thank you. Appreciate your time with us. All right. Agenda item 6 is the Polco Dog Park Survey findings. Director of Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf Christina Underhill is here, along with representative of Polco, to present the survey findings from the Englewood Dog Park Survey.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, I have Lori Urban with us tonight. She's from Polco, and she'll be presenting the results of the survey. Just a reminder that on January 7th, we sent out 5,000 postcards to Englewood residents. The residents had until February 9th to fill out that survey online, or they could request a paper copy, and we mailed it to them. We received a handful of paper copies back. On February 10th, until March 3rd. The open survey was open to anybody in Englewood who wished to participate. So these are the results of that survey. And after Lori goes through her portion and you have questions for her, I'll have a couple options moving forward to give you to get your input on how you want to see us proceed. So Lori, take it away.
Okay, can everyone hear me all right?
You're a
Yes.
little soft, but we can hear you
Oh.
and we can see the screen.
All right, I will speak a little louder.
Actually, you can see you on the second screen if you have one, but go ahead.
Okay, let me
We don't have a
try and
PowerPoint up yet.
share my screen here.
There, now we can see it.
Okay, let me move this around a little bit. Okay, so good evening, Mayor Olson and Council. As Christina said, my name is Lori Urban. I'm the Director of Client Success at Polco, and I'm happy to be here tonight to present the results of the Dog Park Survey for Englewood. Just a quick overview. Generally, this will be a high-level summary of the detail that you'll find in your very lengthy report, but we'll kind of cover the topics that are outlined in the executive summary in that main report, as well as the separate executive summary that you all received. Before we dive in, surveys like this tend to speak to your residents about your desired level of transparency and accountability that the city is interested in hearing from them, and getting data-driven or making data-driven decisions. This also allows you to hear from a different voice because it's a random sample. You get to hear from those who don't just attend council meetings or contact staff or you all. You get to hear from the rest of your constituency. I will allow you to ask any questions at any point in time, but if you prefer to hold them till the end, that's fine too. There's going to be time for that as well. So just a quick background about Polco for those of you who are not familiar with our organization. Polco is a communications and analytics platform that's used to improve resident input and processes, particularly with local governments. In 2019, Polco and National Research Center merged. I've been with NRC since 2002, and we're located just north of y'all in Boulder, Colorado. I've guided hundreds of projects from conception to completion, including the one that we've done for you. And we have been leading the industry, particularly for local governments, for the last 27 years. We work regularly to present best practices and survey methods at research conferences, such as the American Association for Public Opinion Research, which we'll be attending in May. And we also partner with the International City County Management Association, as well as the National League of Cities, presenting at their conferences and we are actually preferred partners for both of those organizations. For Englewood's survey, we used survey best practices, which include randomly selecting 5,000 households to receive the survey from all eligible households within the community. We geocode the addresses that are selected to ensure that they're within the city, as well as we tracked distance from 5 different parks within the city for the selected households. So those within a half a mile of Duncan, Cushing, Emerson, Jason, and Northwest Greenbelt, as well as those that are outside of that half-mile limit. We send multiple contacts to help increase response rates. We also included the invitations in both English and Spanish, so people could take the survey online in their preferred language. We do oversample multifamily housing units because we know that they tend to under-respond to surveys. So we want to make sure that from the get-go, we're trying to bring in the representation and the proper proportions. We received 520 completed surveys, 3 of which were in Spanish, for a response rate of 11%, which is pretty typical for this kind of methodology. We sent out 2 postcard invitations asking residents to go online to respond to the survey. We also weight the survey data to the most recent census or American Community Survey data to ensure that the results are representative and can be generalized to your population as a whole. We also provided throughout the report, but as well as more detail in the appendices, breakdowns of the responses by demographic subgroups, as well as those geographic areas that we tracked. The first finding that we uncovered in the results was that most residents use city parks and they value maintenance and cleanliness of them. About 4 in 5 had used city parks in the 12 months prior to the survey. And when we looked at breakdowns of which respondent subgroups were using parks more or less, households with children under the age of 18 tended to be more likely to use city parks. We asked about the use of 16 different parks in Englewood. Between 30 and 63% of respondents had used each of these 8 parks seen here on the slide, with Bates, Logan, Bellevue both receiving about 63 or about 60% of respondents saying they had used that park at least once in the 12 months prior to the survey. Less than 30% had used the remaining 8 parks in the 12 months prior to the survey, some of which included Rotello, the Northwest Greenbelt, and Emerson Park. We asked about 11 different potential concerns as they relate to Englewood parks on a scale of major, moderate, minor, or not at all a concern. A majority were concerned about maintenance, and just over half were concerned about the cleanliness overall of city parks. Roughly 40% were worried about dog-human conflicts and dog-dog conflicts. And half or more were not at all concerned about parking, noise, the dog areas or parks being located away from housing, as well as distance of dog areas or parks from sports fields. We saw about half of households reported having a dog, at least one dog, and 40% of those had used existing off-leash city dog parks or areas in the 12 months prior to the survey. Again, this is kind of just depicting that 40% of dog owners who had used an existing park represents 19% of all respondents. And again, we looked at breakdowns of use of different off-leash areas by respondent demographics as well as geographic location. And of the households with dogs, those with kids, households located within a half-mile of Jason Park and outside a half-mile of Emerson Park tended to report higher use of the off-leash dog areas in the city. The 19% of respondents who had reported having a dog as well as having used an existing off-leash dog park in Englewood, about 6 in 10 of those had used Jason Park and Canine Corral at least once in the last year. We saw that 1/3 had used Centennial and Duncan Park. 82% had never used the Northwest Greenbelt in the 12 months prior to the survey. Generally, residents feel dogs can be off leash in city parks, but prefer them to be in a fenced-in area. And dog park users prioritize cleanliness and maintenance for a successful fenced-in dog park. Respondents selected which one of the 5 statements aligned best with their feelings about dog parks in Englewood. About half felt that dogs can be off leash in a fenced-in area, while 1/4 felt dogs can be off leash with no fence required. About 19% felt that dogs should always be on leash. Overall, there were just a few differences in preferences for on versus off leash in city parks. Those who are more likely to prefer dogs on leash are these listed here. Again, residents with longer tenure in the community, those who do not own a dog, and those who live a half-mile outside of any of the 5 specific parks that we asked about on the survey, or I guess tracked, as far as where households were located, including Duncan, Jason, Cushing, Emerson, and the Northwest Greenbelt. Not surprising, given the findings about the different concerns that residents had about city parks. Cleanliness and maintenance were the most important features in a successful fenced-in dog park. And respondents placed a lower importance on a separate small dog area as well as dog amenities. About between 40 and 50% roughly felt that those 2 were not at all important in a successful dog park. a majority of respondents had supported a fenced off leash dog area in Emerson, Cushing, Duncan, and Jason parks overall. But that support kind of lessened as we had showed them different maps and images of where those off-leash areas could be.
Could I ask a question at this point? When you keep saying majority, you're talking about a very simple majority, right? Of just a little over 50%?
Yes, generally it's about 6 and 10. We would still consider a majority within the margin of error.
Okay. Just want to make, I mean, on the last one, it was 52%, but this one's 6 out of 10. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So when we look at the support or opposition for any kind of initiative, it's really important not just to look at support or opposition, but also to look at how strongly people feel about on either side of the fence, no pun intended. You know, in these instances, it is important to note that while 6 and 10 strongly are somewhat supported, of that 6 and 10, 40% or more strongly supported the fenced off-leash areas in each of the 4 parks that we had asked about. So this is an overview of the slides that will follow. We'll kind of outline a little bit more specifically, including the images that were shown to residents, the specifics about the 5 parks that were the main focus of the survey. Overall, we saw that most residents, again, 77% for Cushing Park supported the fenced area for dogs. And similar for Jason Park, about 66% supported that area. We did have a kind of middle category where people could select they neither supported nor opposed the fenced in area at that specific park. So when looking at the levels of support or opposition here, you can kind of see that the levels of support for Cushing and Jason Park strongly outweigh the levels of opposition for fenced in areas at those 2 parks. Duncan Park, it's a little bit more split. I would be a little bit more cautious with, even though 60% still oppose a single fence kind of down the middle of that park. There's still enough people who were in that neither category or in opposition. And then similarly for Northwest Greenbelt and Emerson Park, I would say people were more evenly split in their support or opposition for fences or fenced areas at those 2 parks. So here we'll look at those overviews pretty quickly and the ratings for each of the 5 parks that we asked about. You can kind of see in that upper left area of Cushing Park is where we had proposed the fenced area. And again, 77% supported it versus 9% in opposition. At Jason Park, we had still a majority, 66% supporting it, 40% voicing strong support, while 17% opposed that off-leash area in Jason Park. Duncan Park, again, we had proposed 1 fence down the middle of the park where there would be an off-leash area. And to distinguish, as we did for respondents, the off-leash area is not a fully fenced in area. When we called it an area, it was a partial fence. For a dog park, it was a fully fenced area. Northwest Greenbelt had much less support, less than half supported a fence in this park, and 31% had opposed it. So there's a little bit more balance between levels of support and opposition for this specific park. And in Emerson Park, we saw a similar kind of pattern, 41% supporting it, but almost an equal proportion opposing a fenced area in this park. We did look at breakdowns of responses, again, to the levels of support for each park. These are the groups that tended to offer higher levels of support for various fenced or non-fenced areas in each of the 5 parks. The length of residency, people who had a longer tenure, much longer tenure, tended to give higher levels of support for fenced park at Cushing Park. Dog owners were more supportive of off-leash areas or parks at Emerson, Cushing, and Northwest Greenbelt, and households with children tended to offer more support for off-leash areas at Northwest Greenbelt, sorry, tongue-tied there, and Duncan Park. So in general, we did see that many respondents had supported a dog licensing program in Englewood, but were slightly more reserved when it came to implementing policy changes for non-residents. We saw about 2/3 of respondents supporting a dog licensing program in Englewood. That question did not include any kind of fee, so levels of support could change as more details emerge about that specific program. But overall, 67% were supportive of it, given the information that we had provided. And about half of respondents felt that non-Englewood residents should be able to use parks with their dogs, and felt that they should be charged an additional licensing fee to be allowed to have their dogs in city parks.
Could you go back a slide? I'm not sure I understood what this means. No, you're right on 5.
Yeah,
in
sorry.
general, many respondents support a dog licensing program in Englewood, but are more hesitant of policy changes for non-residents. What are you meaning by that statement about the non-residents? I'm not sure what you were summarizing there from the data.
Sure, it has to do with these last two bars. So particularly the bottom one. So where we're asking if residents would support non-residents paying an additional licensing fee to help maintain parks and be allowed to have their dogs there.
And remind me, the folks that are demonstrated or that are part of this sample are who?
Only residents.
Only residents. So only residents weren't sure about whether we should increase fees with non-Englewood people.
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's what I thought it was saying, but I just
Yes, no. And so as you can see, kind of that bottom bar, the proportions of support for each level of support, each level of opposition, they're really pretty evenly split across there. So I think residents you might want to dig a little bit deeper to find out what the hesitancy might be, but by implementing something like this, and what might, push them in a direction of support, or more opposition, depending on the different, details of what that licensing fee or program would look like.
And we're absolutely sure this sample are residents. There's no way anybody could put something else in.
Correct.
They're identifiable by residents.
Yes, we did include a PIN that residents needed to include when they responded to the survey. And so that, again, was to do two things. It was to help identify the geographic location to the 5 parks that we had tracked, as well as to ensure that they were households that were randomly selected within the city limits to take the survey.
Okay. I'm going to probably keep asking that question tonight. I don't mean to be bothering you, but we have a lot of people watching tonight, and many have called me in the last week or two suggesting that there are different samples producing different results, and so I will probably keep asking just to make sure we all know this is who this group was.
Yes, this presentation is based solely on the random sample of households within the city of Englewood.
Thank you.
And the same is true of the full report of results. There are 2 appendices where we show the full frequencies of responses to every question for the open participation survey, as well as an appendix that compares the results of the random sample survey to the open participation survey. So specific to those issues related to dog licensing and fees for non-residents to use city parks with their dogs, we saw higher levels of support for those with these groups. Longer tenured residents supporting non-residents being able to use city parks with their dogs, non-dog owners supportive of dog licensing programs, which may not be surprising, and then residents that live within 1/2 mile of Emerson and Jason parks, as well as 1/2 mile outside of Cushing Park, were more supportive of non-residents paying an additional dog licensing fee. So that's actually all the information I have for you for tonight, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Thank you. Council, time to ask questions about what any of this could mean, doesn't mean. Go ahead, Councilmember Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lori, for, I love Polco, and thank you for administering this survey and just properly and using all the rigor I know you used in putting it together. These are very helpful for us and for our decision-making moving forward. So just thank you. Great presentation.
Great, thank you.
Other questions for the researchers? Well, you'll stand by for us, right?
Hey, Mayor, I have a question.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
So I thank you very much for the presentation tonight. I guess the question at the very top is stated that if a resident did request a paper copy, they can receive one. Did anybody request a paper copy and return a paper copy as well?
Yeah, Vice Mayor, we had, I believe, 4 requests for paper copies. A few of those were elderly individuals, and they did return them. So we were able to get those inputted and be counted in the random sample survey.
Okay, thank you, Director Underhill. And then I guess another question I have is about the fenced area versus the one fenced area versus the no fenced area in the Northwest Greenbelt. I guess I was just, the way, I think when you look at the presentation, I think it makes sense. But basically what you're saying is the people that strongly support a one fenced area at Duncan Park is 33%. And 27% somewhat support that one fenced area within that park. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, and so the same is true of the Northwest Greenbelt, where the question asked no fence. The
Yes.
people that supported are 26%. So we are talking
Yes.
about, because the question above it for Jason Park, I believe, was the one that stated a fenced area. And so here they're answering the question of whether there's a no fence, one fence, or a fenced in area.
Yes, and each of these images that we presented included a 2 or 3 sentence description that staff helped us write about what currently exists at that park and what we hoped that possibly could exist at that park along. And the image is the presentation of future state. So they had, respondents were given a lot of information to be sure that it was clear to them what we were asking and what we were presenting for a future possibility.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Member Russell, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. And this question may be more for Director Underhill. Why were there no questions in the survey about enforcement of off-leash dog parks? And the reason I'm asking that question is the very first sentence in council action, previous council action, says that staff's presentation was in response to a number of residents requesting Emerson Park become part of the off-leash dog program, along with numerous complaints regarding enforcement of the off-leash program.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that, Councilmember Russell. So initially, back in March, I want to say, we had quite a few residents, it was before COVID and we went virtual, came to a council meeting requesting Emerson Park become off-leash. And that's what kind of kicked off the conversation of our off-leash program. And it continued to escalate from Emerson Park to then Jason, and it grew from there. And so that's why Emerson Park we included in this, to find out if there is a need to have that as an off-leash area. part of the concern from those residents coming to council and our commission for Parks and Recreation was they were being cited, and it wasn't an official off-leash area. And so that's what kicked off this conversation, was Emerson Park potentially becoming an off-leash park.
Okay, but the enforcement issue piece of this, because I remember that, and it probably was at the end of 2019 is my guess, or maybe the very first part of 2020, when residents came forward. There are quite a few of them complaining about the enforcement of the off-leash program. Can council get a copy of all complaints, since it wasn't included in the survey? Can council get a copy of how many complaints at each park regarding the enforcement of the off-leash program?
Councilmember Russell, what date, like when would you like us to go back to get that information?
Why don't we, maybe start mid 2019 and maybe through 2020?
Okay, yeah.
Director Underhill, that's fairly easy for you to do, isn't it?
It should be. We'll work with code enforcement. They were the ones running that at the time. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
We also received dog bite stuff recently as well. So I don't know if we want to put it all in one big document. I don't know. Tonight you need, you're wanting some direction with this, right? And what we do next.
Yeah, and Lori, if you could go to almost the last slide there. So we have a couple options to present. So you have the results of this survey, and you kind of have an idea now of what our residents are looking for. But there's a couple options. So one, we can reconvene the task force, and we have spoken with all of the task force members from the past, and we actually have some new ones from Englewood Unleashed. All are willing to reconvene and come back together to take the survey, analyze it, come up with results and recommendations, and then potentially bring them back to you around July timeframe. And the other option would be then, if you think you have enough information to come to a decision only via council, we can come back to either another study session for a discussion, or come back to a council meeting if you want to have ideas and take a vote for how this program would proceed. So one, bring back the task force, or two, council has enough information to make a decision moving forward. So I just want some direction on how you see this moving forward, and how we come up with results for this program and hopefully implement them early next year.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem C.R.S.
Thank you, Mayor. And actually, Director Underhill, before I answer that, your next steps, just a question regarding the survey regarding just a fenced-in area, because it did say that 52% of those surveyed would prefer dogs to be off-leash, but within a fenced area. And then when you look a couple slides after that, they say in order for a fenced-in area to be successful, 94% need cleanliness and maintenance, 71% said a grass area. I guess my question is, I believe Jason Park may still be closed, or that area may still be closed to dog parks, just because you were looking for the grass to grow back, and I think it's supposed to open in May sometime. I guess my question would be, how successful could an or a fenced-in area be if we're trying to keep in a grass area? And it's a very similar, basically similar landscape to what is occurring at Jason Park. How often would you have to close down these fenced off areas in order to keep the grass alive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And Dave Lee's actually on the call. He may be able to help answer that a little bit better. But ultimately, it's not allowing 24/7 type access to the park. It would have to be closed, probably like we did for Jason Park, February or March to May, to overseed and do what we need to do to get grass back. Adding areas like Cushing Park, Emerson, Duncan, we could rotate closures. So not just one park is closed, or only one park's closed, there's access to others. And so ultimately it's closing the park down and doing the maintenance needed. I would anticipate probably twice a year that would have to happen to keep the grass growing. And obviously depends on seasonal conditions as well, but that the control of being able to close an area to do the maintenance is what's really needed to keep it green. And Dave, do you have anything else to add on the maintenance piece?
I do not. I think Director Underhill answered it pretty well.
Since we have you on here, do you mind, Mayor Pro Tem, if I add on what are the costs to that?
Sure, go ahead.
What would be the financial implications for that? Do we have any idea? Or is there a way to project it?
Who are you asking?
I guess I'm asking either of you, but maybe you, Dave, because you've worked at this a while, but like, how much does it cost to do what we're doing right now? I know that isn't all just, that was a failure of some things too, right? Of needing to fix some things there.
Well, yeah, there were some weeded areas that we needed to address as well. Some of this is caused by the drought. Some of it's just wear and tear. Some of it is a need for a new irrigation system there as well. So I think those are all factors that come into play. As far as costs, I think we spent about $1,400 to rent those fence panels. We'll spend probably $2,000 to $4,000 on seed. I'm not sure on top dressing material and fertilizers, but it won't be as much as the grass seed.
And then staff time too, right?
And staff time, correct.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, were you finished? I just thought as long as you were asking that, just add on finances.
Well, yeah. I guess the question that's not answered is regarding acreage. What is an appropriate acreage for each of the sites? So I think it was 0.6 or 0.8 for the Cushing site, 1.5 for Jason Park. It doesn't look like we asked that question of what the appropriate acreage would be.
Okay.
Yeah, you're correct on that. I'll just answer that real quick. We did not ask that question because we are somewhat limited in what we can offer for off-leash areas. And we don't want to give the whole park away because there's other uses of all our parks. And so we've been talking to many other cities, municipalities, and the dog parks all vary in size from a half acre and on up. So it just varies on what you can have and what the city's comfortable allowing as an off-leash area.
Thank you. Member Anderson, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Underhill. I have a question on next steps. If we asked the off-leash task force to reconvene, how many meetings are you anticipating that would take?
That's a really good question. I feel like we had 5 meetings last year to get us to the point of producing the survey with the questions that we ask, and now we had the answer to that. So I would anticipate 3 to 4 meetings with the off-leash task force. So May through June would be my guess that it would take that many. It could take a few more too, but so far all the members of the task force are on board.
And as you've talked to them, is this something they feel like they want to do or they need to do to kind of finish their original purpose? Or are we just, I just don't want to be in a position where we're kicking this back to committees over, I don't like the practice of just continually kicking stuff back to committees. I feel like I'm looking at the survey, I'm ready to have the discussion and make a decision, but if they feel like their purpose has not been completed yet, then I'd be open to sending it back to them. Otherwise, I'd like to, I'm ready for council to move on this. But what do you think on that, Director Underhill?
That's a good question. I haven't had that deep of a conversation other than, are you available? Are you willing to come back to be on the task force? So like I said, most everyone said yes, and we're willing to come back and finish this and get the results to you all for the final recommendations. So it's really up to you as a council how you would like to proceed.
Okay, yeah, I think Mayor, I think I'm totally happy just doing this as a city council rather than sending it back to them. I don't feel like there's anything in this survey that changes how I changes how my read on their recommendations, everything dramatically. But I'm open to sending it back to them if we think it'll be helpful. But otherwise, I'd like to move on this, sooner rather than later, personally. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really helpful. It's a great question to ask. So anybody else, could you please weigh in as we go around again? So Member Ward, you're next.
So we have 2 prior task force actions on this topic, followed by this survey. How do the survey results compare to the previous task force reactions?
Good question. So this survey is a result of the second task force actions. The recommendations that you saw were more or less a consensus from the last task force that concluded back in December. And the prior task force, this does align pretty closely with their recommendations. And so I'd be happy to send those previous recommendations out to you all for another review if you would like. And so you can see how it compared to the survey.
That would be helpful for me. I wasn't sitting on council at the time those were discussed, so my peers on council may already know, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Sure.
I think it'd be good to have a fresh set of eyes on them too, with somebody who hasn't been looking at them. But I am a little bit concerned about going with, when we look at 50%, 52% of a group, when, okay, 50% of the people that were surveyed had dogs, and only 40% of that, so we're talking even smaller. It just, so some of the data, I think it's a great study. I think it's just really great. But what we find out is we're not talking about everybody in the city wanting something. So I think it is going to come down to council trying to weigh it all out to say what's going to be useful or not. And we're probably going to have to be, people are not going to be happy all the way around with us, I'm sure. Yeah. So I'm a little bit nervous about taking some of the data and making decisions based on it, because I think it's such a small number of when you start drilling down to percent. Other perspectives on this. I also was laughing earlier, if you're watching, I'm not trying to be, but 12 years ago, right now, this was the topic of the day, and I was just looking at whether I was going to run for council or not, and the council of that time really tried to get this done before the election so that it wouldn't mess up, and so I really do want to see this council make this decision, and that we don't kick it down the road another, this is a change from what we started off leash parks at that point, and that was a big deal. So now we've had 12 years. What do we learn? What do we want to do? So I would like to make sure that everybody sees both the last time and this time from December, if Member Ward, if that's helpful to you. And it might be useful, because I think Member Anderson's question was a good one with this other committee. Do they really want to, now that they get to see the data, weigh in on it, because they didn't get to see the Polco and make any further recommendations, right? So if they want to do that, I'm open to that. But if they just as soon do it, I'm ready to go too. Mayor Pro Tem, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. And actually, Director Underhill, I may be mistaken, but I thought that the final meeting of the off-leash task force did not come with recommendations. If they did come with recommendations, they weren't. The two factions weren't seeing eye to eye on the recommendations. So I'm not sure if I understand the statement of this kind of aligns with the task force findings, that there was no recommendations. Could you clarify that statement?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I was referring to the subcommittee that occurred in March, April timeframe of 2020. The findings of this survey actually aligned a little bit better with their recommendations than what the new task force that came back together summer through fall into December. That task force created the survey more or less based off of conversations, and I'll call them recommendations just to get us to the survey. But you're correct. The last task force that we had in December did not completely agree with moving forward, and that's why the survey happened.
Right. Thank you, Director Underhill. And I think that that's kind of where, so that's what I understood as well, that the one area that they did agree upon was the fact that there should be a survey. So I do feel that there should be, I do believe that they should reconvene, just because this was their one ask, so they can see the results and see if there's any type of recommendations they want to make based off the survey results. I do have concern that there may not be any agreement regardless of the survey results. So I don't want to stretch it out to 3 meetings if after the first meeting we see that there's just going to be no agreement in a way to move forward. But I agree with Member Anderson in the sense that ultimately this does fall on the shoulders of City Council to state whether or not what the law should be within the city of Englewood for off-leash dog parks. But I would be in agreement with at least having to go back for 1 meeting.
And I don't know, I don't see any other hands up, but I also, when it comes back to us again, I think some of the things that I would really want is to know what kind of acreage are we thinking within the city can be utilized in each of these parks? What sort of the funding, what the costs are if we put up one long fence versus a enclosure and that kind of thing, and what are we looking at financially? Our parks are for everybody, not just dog owners. Everybody knows that, but we got to sort of figure out, okay, where do we find some balance here? I have had a number of people, as I'm sure the rest of you have, tell me they don't use the parks at all because they just don't want to go and have to deal with the dogs. But there's no dog bite to show that happened. It's just their sentiment. And I want all of our people to feel like, regardless of if their dogs are not there, that they feel comfortable going to our parks all the time without any worry. Maybe that's idealistic. I guess the other question I also have is where does Englewood Unleashed fit in with this? Because they seem to be the group that really has changed in the 12 years as well. I must say the style and approach and sentiment of the group is quite different than 12 years ago. But I don't know how they fit in with this. So Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, to add to what I would like at least to hear back is also, and staff, you would probably have to provide kind of like a timetable to the off-leash task force in terms of how often these fenced-in areas would be closed for maintenance if we decided to go down that route. So I think they need as much information as possible to kind of make their recommendations, as do City Council.
I'm going to be really upfront too. I have a major problem with making a very tiny park into a dog park, an off-leash. I mean, and I think we have some neighborhood parks like that are just really going to be problematic, but we got to figure that out if that's, yeah. All right, anything else? Do you have enough direction from us? The good news is I think we're all willing to make the decisions. We know it's not going to be easy, right? I mean, I'm sort of sensing that from most. I don't see some nods from everybody, but I'll take that as no hand up saying no, it's an agreement. All right. Thank you, Director Underhill.
Thank you all. I appreciate the time.
All right, and we're going to take a break. We'll come back at the top of the hour at 8 p.m. So a little recess. Thanks so much, Ms. Urban. Appreciate the work you did.
Thank you. And to answer your question, Mayor, I am available later if there are questions.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, council, if we can all show our lovely faces. All right, our next item is agenda item 8, consideration of a local improvement district for alley paving. This is direction that staff would like tonight. Our Director of Public Works, Maria DeAndre, and Capital Projects and Engineering Manager, Tim Hose, are here to discuss creation of a local improvement district for alley paving in the 3900 block between Broadway and Tacoma Street. Thank you for being here. And we all got something else earlier this afternoon, so make sure that you have all the documents, folks.
All right, good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thanks for having us here this evening. I believe Director DeAndre is still with the organized waste collection citizen committee meeting, so should be along here shortly. But I can give you the PowerPoint presentation and kind of go over the summary of the request here, so you can consider it. I'll get the PowerPoint going here. I'll share my screen and see if we can get things started.
It sounds good.
I can find it here. Let's see here. Let's see if it'll come up here. We've got a couple things here. Okay. Let's see here. Come up here. Let me find it here. What's happening? Find it here. Okay, let's see if this works. There it is. Okay, all right. You see that okay there?
Yep, we're seeing it now.
Sorry for that delay. I had too many things open there, I think. So.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. All right, so here's the presentation here. So what this is, we had a request from a resident that was interested in funding the cost to pave a section of alley behind the 3900 block of Broadway. So let's go to the map here. This is the section here. It's Broadway's here. This is Mansfield right here to the north, and Nassau Avenue to the south. So got the 7-Eleven on the corner here. So this is the section in red is the section that they're interested in funding the cost to pave that. So this south 200 feet here is already paved in concrete. So they'd be interested in paving the remainder of the remaining 400 feet of the alley in concrete to match what's there on that south end. So that's what they're looking to do. The estimated cost to do this work, we put together a rough cost here of what it would take to pave that 400 feet. This is to pave it in the concrete to match what's there now. The paving cost there is based on an 8-inch depth. We don't have an actual alley paving bid item recently to refer to, but we do have some costs for 8-inch thickness concrete that we use for our cross pans, that we use that number to give us a pretty close estimate of what it would cost to pave 8-inch thick, and we spread it out over the area of the alley that would be paved here. So we're looking at a cost of around $141,000 to do this work. So then we'll go in a little bit here into what a local improvement district is and kind of how they work. So essentially what the requester has asked for is they're interested in funding the work, but they'd like to be able to spread the costs out over a number of years. So by forming a local improvement district, they can, if the city council would approve that, they would be able to spread the payments out over a number of years, so they wouldn't have to fund it all up front. That $141,000 could be spread out over a number of years. So the city code does allow for the creation of these districts and references state statute as far as how to create them and do the proper notification and assessments and things like that. So all of these local improvement districts must be authorized by the city council. So it is something city council would have to approve to move forward on something like this. And then the kind of the way they start, I guess, is the municipal code and the Colorado revised statutes require either the applicant needs to give us a petition saying they would like to create one of these districts, or city council can introduce a resolution on its own initiative to start the process to create one of these districts. So then once the petition or the resolution has been put forward there, a public hearing must be held on the potential creation of the district to hear any concerns or questions from the public. And then after that, the city council can choose to approve the local improvement district. So kind of the way it works is the city would have to front the cost to the requester for the work there, and they pay it back over time. They've asked for a 10-year payback period, and the code does allow the city to charge interest on the money, so the city could charge an interest rate that they would expect to be receiving on that money over time. So at the end of the 10 years, the city would not be out any money. It would just be a upfront cost there to basically kind of bankroll the cost of it over time. But at the end of the time, the city would be whole at the end of the payback period. So that's kind of a summary of how those districts work here. And then got this next slide, this kind of a summary of all the alleys in the city that are currently paved and unpaved. All the alleys in red are the ones that are paved. So if you can see my cursor here, this one that they're asking to pave is this little gap right here. This little piece right there is you can see all the alleys to the north and all the alleys to the south of this little piece are already paved in concrete. So they'd basically be kind of finishing that link there of most of the alleys that are paved are right here along Broadway. All the ones along all the businesses and stuff along Broadway, most of the ones along the back of those businesses are already paved. So I think that's why this property owner is interested in doing that as well. They've got a business there that they're interested in having the paved alley to make their access a little bit nicer to get to their business. So otherwise with that, I don't think we have a whole lot else there. Background information, we'd like to get some feedback tonight, whether the city council would be interested in moving forward with forming a local improvement district for the purpose of paving this alley section and having it funded by the property owner there, and having the city spread the payments out over time through a local improvement district. So we'd like to get some feedback on if you'd like us to move forward with the process to form one of these districts for the purpose of paving this section of alley in the city. So we can.
All right.
Is there any questions or any discussion you would like to have on this?
We do. We have 3 with hands up already. So go ahead, Member Ward, you can start.
If I understand correctly, we've had a request from one property owner along this block. And if you can scroll back to the map, the satellite photo, it looks like there's about 10 or 15 properties on this block. Are we talking about charging all of them this local district fee based on the request of one owner, or is the one owner agreeing to foot the entire fee?
So the one owner has indicated that he's willing to foot the entire bill. He doesn't want to spread it out over the cost of all the other properties. He's willing to pay the cost, but he would like the city to help with the kind of to spread the payments out over time. But he is willing to pay the entire cost, and he would not. He's not interested in having to be assessed on any of the other property owners along there.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. My question, Mr. Hoos, is along those same lines, and a little bit about how the local improvement district works. Is this then a geographically defined area? So do you draw do you draw a little line around the properties that are willing to pay that assessment, or how, and including the alley? How does that work? How do we set it up so that the local improvement district only includes the one property owner willing to pay for the improvements that benefit other property owners?
I think it'd be we would certainly want to define the extent of the improvements, the start and stop point, I guess, and the width. But it would just be reference the one property owner would then pay for the cost of the improvements along the frontage of the other properties. It'd be set up so where just the one property owner would be assessed the cost, and it'd be defined that the cost or the extent of the improvements is from Mansfield all the way down to the existing paved section, and including the areas in front of the other properties that this property owner doesn't own.
And do you know which properties are the property owner owns in this situation?
I believe it's this big property here in the middle. I think it's this large property kind of in the middle of the block is the one that's interested in funding this improvement.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. I've talked to this property owner as well, and I think they also own the car lot to the north now as well. So I think they own the full north half of the block.
That was my understanding
Yeah.
too. Do we have any confirmation of that? Or can we get that, I guess?
I have not heard, Mayor and council members, if I do know that the gentleman we've been talking to do own this. I'm not sure that they own that. If they were in negotiations, I was not aware of that northernmost lot.
Councilmember Anderson, or did they have someone else who was willing to pay in? Maybe that was it.
No, I mean, from my conversations with the property owners, they have recently purchased both I'm putting my cursor on the screen as though you can see that, but both the big lot to the south of it and to the north of it. Unless I misunderstood something, but over the last year or two, they originally only owned the big building in the middle, and I believe they've purchased both car lots, both north and south of them at this point, but I could be mistaken, so but I'm pretty sure that's true.
Mayor Pro Tem, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Director DeAndre or Mr. Hoos, are they aware what the potential cost is for this alley paving?
Yeah, that information's been shared with them, and they're aware of we put the estimate together and sent it to them, and they are aware of the cost implications of doing this entire section here, how much that would be.
Okay. And then I guess for the LID, then, are we able to just limit it to just those property owners and not everyone that's actually benefiting from the paving of the alley? I guess it depends on how you define benefit, but.
That was my understanding from talking with our previous interim city attorney, was that we could establish a local improvement district with just one property owner if they were willing to pay for the entire improvement.
Okay, and then last question. Let's say we move forward with this, and worst case scenario, the city does not get paid back for the alley pavement. What's our recourse, or what does that process look like?
Yes, it becomes a lien on the property. So basically, it's once the property, it goes into arrears, or it becomes, then if it ever gets sold again, that it would be paid off at the time of when it was resold. But I believe then there would be remedies that the city could pursue against the property to exact those costs.
Thank you, Director. Do you mind if I ask follow-up questions, Mayor, or?
No, let me ask, next is Member Russell. Let her go next, and then you can come back if she doesn't ask what you ask.
Thank you. So how long has this business owner owned at least the original property?
I don't know.
Not aware of that either.
So there really is nothing securing it other than a lien. We've had businesses sit vacant on Broadway for decades. So I think we should just remember that. All right, thank you. I think that's all the questions I have right now.
Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to ask another one?
Yeah, Mayor, and this may actually be a question for Director Loh, or maybe just anybody else within staff. But I guess the question is, in these type of instances, when there is a lien placed on a property and they do default, does the city get 100% back of that property? From my understanding, in many cases, they just settle for a lower amount. But I guess I'm just trying to get an answer on what happens, again, worst case.
Do we have someone from the finance team who can answer that, or maybe that needs to be a council request?
Yeah, it will definitely be a council request.
Okay.
Probably need to have our city attorney group look at it as well. So, and I guess one of my questions would be, I mean, yes, businesses that own their own buildings go out of business or decide to leave it there for lots of financial reasons that sometimes make them wealthier, but not us. But do we have any that the city has an agreement with currently that's happened where we have not gotten what we need to out of them? I don't recall any where we've had an agreement on something where they were supposed to be paying us. I don't
I am
know.
not aware, Mayor, but we haven't looked specifically for that information, so we could certainly determine if there's any out there like that.
It would be good to know if there are any that we could follow up on and say, okay, well, we've done this in the past and this didn't go well, or if that's just, yes, people go out of business, so, but that's their property and they get to do what they want. Unfortunately, I would like to see us get rid of some of those or help them move on and get something in there, but right by use and everything else is there. And it's a free American society. Unfortunately, that doesn't always help us. So our city attorneys group is on. I don't know, Attorney Sellers, if you have anything you'd like to add in.
No, we can definitely look at your question regarding enforcement, but I mean, it does run with the property. It's going to be a lien from the get-go. So any property transfers or, businesses that leave, the subsequent owner is going to have to be liable for it. And so, it's also, it goes, it's certified to the county. It's collected as a tax lien eventually. And so typically if you want to, you can always settle for less if you want. But you don't necessarily have to either, but it may be a longer period before you see money if the property goes into kind of the black hole some properties do. So that's kind of the risk you take.
So I think I'd like to find out more to move this forward to see if it's possible to let this happen and make it happen. I mean, there's very few people that come forward and say they want to pave it on their own and pay for it over 10 years. And we need to know, where would our money come from? How would we charge it? I want to know whether they're a viable business, how long they've been in business, and whether or not they have deeper pockets than, just started up recently. Member Anderson, I see your hand.
I'm in favor of moving this forward, or at least getting answers to questions on next steps. I think that in the broader conversation on alleys, these alleys on either side of Broadway, I think if you want to see Broadway improved, working its way south through Englewood, you got to have paved alleys. Businesses that move in there want paved alleys, especially if they're receiving deliveries and that kind of thing. So regardless of whether or not this is this particular property owner is long-term or whatever, I think it's a public benefit for the city in the long term, and in terms of seeing Broadway improve. And if they're willing to fund it over 10 years, all the better. So I think a lien on their property would be a motivating force to get them to actually pay it. I don't see them walking away from this property and not paying the city back or anything like that. I think that would be extremely unlikely with a lien on their property. So I think that's a high motivational thing, but overall, I'm in favor of moving this on to the public hearing.
I would also like to see if there's some model alleys that have pervious materials in them and try them out on something like this if we could. And at least we'd want a stormwater analysis of what a paved alley there looks like. I think it's probably the right thing to do, especially with what's there. But could we try something different here that we couldn't before? Member Russell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like more information before we move on to the public hearing, because I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to the city. And Mayor, I'm not sure if the business owner is going to take all the liability, that we can decide what he wants in the alley. And I think maybe there's requirements of 8 inches of concrete by zoning too. That is a possibility.
There's always a chance to try something new, but I'm not into going directly to a public hearing yet. We got to get more information. I don't think we would have gone directly to a public hearing anyway, would we have? We usually come back with a study of more information before we'd get it to that stage. So others want to weigh in at all? You don't want to see this come forward? Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Mayor, I also need more information before a public hearing. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I think in moving forward, we're talking about just getting the next stage of information so that we can set it up and decide if we're going to move it to the decision-making mode. Member Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. I would definitely like to see this move forward. I want to try and support these types of requests if it makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, great. You have enough information to is anybody else in disagreement with that? Just more information, and then we'll have another study session with it. And then what would be the next step if we all look at it and go, wow, that looks great. Then what happens next? Director DeAndre, what?
Yes, so it's my understanding that we would then schedule the public hearing, do the proper notices, which in this case would be to one person, but we'd probably make the others aware of it as well, the other property owners, and we would move into design then. So we would design this alley with our in-house staff so that we could, and I believe as Manager Host mentioned, we would include the prices in our bids that we're going to get for other concrete work so that we'd have more actual prices.
Okay, great. I see Member Ward's hand up. Sorry if I missed you.
All right, I'm in favor of moving forward with this. I think our risk is actually relatively low here, $141,000. We may even have that much money left over in the long-term asset reserve at this point. This would be a good lever for that, in my opinion. So if the other members of council need more information, I'm always happy to have more information, but I would be ready to go forward now.
All right, I think it's come back with more information soon, and we'll move it to a public hearing if we think we've got everything we need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of exciting to see some people wanting to do some things like that. All right, our next item is 9, which is our COVID-19 update, and I believe Tim Dodd is on tonight, right? Is that right? That's why you're here.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So again, this is a change from 10 days ago. So the report I'm going to reference is from April 26th from today and going back 10 days to April 16th. So we stand right now in Arapahoe County at 55,836 cases. That's an increase of 2,009 from 10 days ago. In Englewood, we stand at 2,551 cases. That's an increase of 109 from 10 days ago. The death numbers have stayed the same in Englewood at 65. However, they've gone up by 10 in a 10-day period in Arapahoe County. They now stand at 769. The 3-day average hospitalization rate for the county is 48. Previously it was 48, excuse me, now it's 43, so a change of 5 in a 10-day period. The vaccination rate has gone up 6.4% and now stands at 49.8%. And just a note about vaccinations, the clinic at the Malley Center continues to go strong. Last week, 131 people came in for a vaccine. And all told, we've had 282 people, I believe, go through for their first vaccine, and then over 50 go through for their second vaccine. We continue to push that out to the public. Our communications department is working on a strategy involving social media, but also for people who may not have computers or use the internet. We also do have a hotline for people to call. And then we also, with people who are trained, and we've had every week, we get several people calling the number, and city staff are helping them register. And then we also are working on a variety of other things as well, such as a banner on Broadway, an advertisement in the Citizen magazine, and then also continuing to work through our nonprofits to make sure that we're reaching everyone we can in the community.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions? Thanks for the information. Appreciate it. And thanks to all the folks that are working on the site at the Malley Center. Next is a reports from board and commissions. Anybody want to report on your liaison work in the last week or two? I think I might have. Nope. Mine are all just updates for other things. Don't see anybody with any. We're all in the off week. All right. Next is council members' choice. Under it, we have start times for meetings, and I believe I remember this from the last year manager meeting. We Mayor Portem, I just wanted to check in with you. I think I've said over and over, I don't want to creep into the 5:30 time. But as we look over the next several months, we are going to have we have over 20 that applied for boards and commissions. And it may have gone up, I don't know. And so there may be a few times. So I guess I'd like to get a reading, since we are a council with one new person, to get a sense of what would you prefer? Would you rather have a 5:30 start, and sometimes we've gone till 10 when that's happened often, maybe 10:15. Or would you like to break it into 2 nights? And so it's a bit of a free discussion. What would you desire? Mayor Portem, did I accurately state that for what we were thinking here?
Yeah, I think so. I think the reason why it came up this past Tuesday was because of the we have the executive session today, and not thinking of what the meeting contained today. I was like, well, let's just do the executive session at the end of the day. But I guess that kind of started off the discussion on whether or not we should start earlier, or would council be open to just finishing later? What would be a preference? So,
Councilmember Ward.
I had some concerns on this very topic that I shared with you all before I joined this council, and I have the same opinion. I do not think this council does its best work in 5 to 6 hour long marathon sessions. So my position on this matter is I would rather split the agenda into 2 nights if we have to, than go till 10 or 11 or midnight, or start earlier and go for a very long period of time each night. It's just, we're not putting out the best product no matter how hard we try at that point.
All right. Fortunately, we haven't gone that long in a long time, but I agree, and it's a different council, and there were times where we were very unproductive after 3 hours. Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so for member Ward, what would be considered, when would we have to start deciding whether or not we go into a second night? Is it 10 p.m. as the cutoff, or just kind of curious, because as the mayor stated, I don't think we've gone too far past 10 o'clock recently, but there's always a chance.
Certainly not a perfect art by any means, sort of like projecting budget revenues. It's hard to tell how long something may or may not take. My target time would be no longer than 4 hours, if possible. So 6 to 10, and then, take a recess to the next day.
Others? I honestly would rather get it done and over with because of family. And I don't have a lot of evenings with my family given my other job. So, but I don't have little kids I'm trying to say goodnight to either. So, Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm okay with an occasional 5:30 start time if that means we're going to be done by 10:30, 10 or 10:30 rather than 10:30 or 11. I don't want to go till, I know we had one that we went till midnight or later one time, and that was not good, probably. So I don't like doing 2 nights. I have a lot going on. But I also don't want to make it a regular habit of just moving meetings back to 5:30 and doing that every time. So if that means, we have to go 2 nights occasionally, then I can understand that as well. But I'm okay with the occasional 5:30 start time.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, Mayor, I was going to say the preference, I would prefer to start at 5:30 if needed for a longer agenda. I would prefer to stay out of a second night, but I do understand members Ward's concern that it is going to go much later and we're not doing our best work, that we should get a second night. But I don't see the agenda going that way in the near future, but 5:30 for me in terms of start time.
I think one of the questions is we're going to have a lot. We might have a lot for the boards and commissions, and I'm thinking in the past we've had to do 2 nights for that. We might have to do that for this particularly. And are you all okay with that, or do you want to do a marathon?
Well, Mayor, we have 22.
It's 22 now.
22 new appointees.
Okay.
Or new applicants.
Yeah. So it could end up being a little longer. We have to make a decision on another night. We'll work it through, but go ahead, Councilmember Wink.
So neither option sounds appealing to me. 1, starting earlier, and 2, going into the hours of the night when I have to wake up at 5. And so I'm wondering if there's something else we can do to the information to better enable us to be efficient with the information. Obviously, we have to interview the candidates, but are we really spending, I don't know, 5:30 is, as an ongoing start, it's going to be tough for me. And I'm not really, so is staying up late in these meetings. So beyond that, I don't know how much to help.
Well, so here's my sense of it. We try not to start at 5:30 unless there's something, and we'll try and give you a heads up. We've had a couple times where we've not given you heads up until we knew we were doing it. So, and we'll make sure we try and do that a little bit earlier if we can. I don't see us doing it very much either in the near future, but there's a couple of things that might happen like that could come up. But I think let's try and keep it under 4 for sure. We'll be done tonight if we finish here. And we'll try not to use the 5:30 unless we really have to, and only when we know we can probably get done by 10 if we do that, rather than split into 2 nights. Does that seem reasonable? Come up with something else, let us know. Okay, great. Other council members' choices. Who else? I do have some things I can tell you about really quickly. I'll just get it started here. Last week, I had the Englewood Chamber on Tuesday morning. I always report to them a little bit, and they have their May 5th special celebration of their 35th anniversary, and they have awards. So if you have not seen that, Tony's been putting some stuff out. The chamber has. People are voting, so it'd be nice if you put it out to people in Englewood to vote for the different nominees. And then I did a coffee with the cop on Wednesday morning. I hadn't done that for a while. It was really great fun. It was good to hear from a few citizens on some of the concerns, and then just see our police, interacting with folks. And they're going to be back hopefully in June. There'll be one outside so that people can actually see face to face the next time. And then I went to the chamber's coffee with the chamber on Friday morning, and that was really helpful. They went around the different businesses, and each one shared a little bit about how the last year has been, what they've been learning, and what they're seeing in the future. And all of them are starting to see an uptick. It was very encouraging. It was probably one of the most encouraging mornings I've had with businesses in a while. Overwhelmingly, they were so positive about the way our city manager and the staff and we as a council have responded with funding and trying to really push the envelope to make sure people are cared for. So, and even photographers are seeing weddings are coming back, people are planning them again and trying to get in their time. So I thought that was very positive. I am concerned, and this is probably a concern we all have, about the parks and dogs and videos being taken, and particularly the way our new park ranger is being treated. I've heard some good things from some folks in some parks, and then I saw a video that was very disturbing to me. But I asked a city manager if he'd please reach out to our staff that are taking care of that and give them an encouragement that they are doing their jobs and doing it to the professional level that I would expect, at least what I saw on some of the video that I saw recently. But tough job, very tough job. Next, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and I second that as well. The code enforcement team and the park ranger obviously have a very tough job of enforcing the rules and the laws that the city council passes. So I do appreciate all the work they're doing in the face of people that are giving them a very tough time and them doing their job. So that's for one. So I do definitely second that. Actually, to kind of add to the code enforcement conversation, I had a conversation with a citizen last week regarding the barking dog ordinance, and I can't remember what the ordinance number is, and City Manager Lewis, I think we emailed or talked briefly about it, but it sounds like this is a code that was being tinkered with by the city attorney, or at least having conversations between code enforcement and the city attorney. Obviously, with us not having a city attorney at the moment, it's been shelved, but Actually, what I would like to do is, if there has been any wording, I'd like for the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee to look at it. And if there's anything else that you could add to that, City Manager Lewis, but it does sound like it's an ordinance that's very hard to, basically just enforce within the city itself.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We did take a look at that today. Actually, Dugan Comer was the author of those edits. I thought it was Alex, but it was Dugan. And so he sent me the draft document. It's not, unfortunately, redlined, so I can't tell exactly what's being changed, but I did ask him to prepare that for the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee. And so we will get that on their agenda as soon as possible. And I should mention that because Councilmember Ward may be saying, that's not the process you told me that we follow, but I assume because the attorneys were working on this, at some point council directed that work. I don't have a recollection of it, but the work has been done by staff. And so I'm simply asking that to now go to the Code Enforcement Advisory Council Committee.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, City Manager Lewis. So and then the last item is just an information session is going to be occurring on May 18th. There's going to be 4 school board seats coming up for election here in November. So there will be an information session on just what it would take in terms of just running for that, for a seat. So I think it's from 5:30 to 6:30. If you have any questions or need any information, please reach out to any school board member, or you can reach out to me and I can send you the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Ward, you're next.
Just a couple things. First of all, on the subject of effective delivery of city services, my neighbor had a fire department call earlier this week. And everything went smoothly. I asked her how the call went, and she said she called dispatch. She got transferred to Denver. The truck was out minutes after, while she was still on the phone with dispatch, actually. The truck arrived. They assessed the scene, took care of what they needed to take care of, and left. It was about a 15-minute phone call, if even that. So I'm happy to report that Denver is doing good work in Englewood. Secondly, I have one legislative item that I'm waiting to see come forward, and I would like to know when I can see that come forward. Can we discuss that now?
What was it, Member Ward?
The update to the Budget Advisory Committee's enabling ordinance.
Oh, that did not appear on the...
It did not.
I thought it was supposed to be on this one, and I'd actually, so our city attorney, Attorney Sellers, do you know where that is? Are we still working on the?
So you're, and someone should correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is you're going to discuss whether or not to actually direct that ordinance to be drafted next meeting. So you're going to be discussing the parameters of whether you can change that next meeting.
Okay, so you're bringing back language, but or the thinking behind it. Is that what it is?
No, we haven't been asked to draft any language. I'm happy to do so, but we've just drafted a memo to talk about whether or not there's any legal hurdles as to amending and expanding the duties of the Budget Advisory Committee. So that's all we were asked to do. But we can also provide language for your next meeting if you'd like as well.
I think it might be helpful to have language too that we could possibly move on, but let's hear from everybody else tonight. We've talked about this a couple times, but I know we wanted to hear what the ins and outs of it were first, of like what the risks are, if any. And that's what you were bringing forward, right? The memo.
And there aren't any. There are no legal risks. So if you want to change it.
So then, knowing that, I mean, are the rest of you okay with us just bringing language forward and anything else that night, rather than just? Okay, great. There you go, Member Ward. That went faster. I thought, for some reason, I thought was on their agenda tonight because I'd had the conversation with, I think, the other attorney.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting
about
to have.
what we needed.
So I feel better now.
Yeah, it's on next week's list. Is what it is. Okay, Member Anderson. Oh, did you have anything else, Member Ward? No, Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two things. Number one is a follow-up from council request. When we were talking about American Rescue Plan funds, there was some suggestion that those maybe could be used for infrastructure, sewer and water infrastructure. And the attorney's note on that was that yes, they aren't subject to the Tabor the Tabor limitations on enterprise funds receiving 10%, since that only applies to local or state governments. But if those monies were transferred directly into our general fund, then it would no longer be a transfer from the government. So I'm wondering what we can do. Well, I guess two things. Number one is I don't know when we're getting that money, but it would be good to have a conversation about how much and whether we wanted to use some of those funds for our enterprise funds. And number two, make sure we're ahead of the game. So instead of that money just going, any money we might want to put towards enterprise funds, instead of it getting stuck in our general fund and subject to the Tabor limitations, we can maybe have that conversation and know how we're going to get that money into the enterprise funds beforehand, if we even want to do that. I know maybe I'm the only one who has any interest in using those funds that way, but I would like to have that conversation before it's too late, if they end up in our general fund. Do you have anything to add to that, attorney? Am I?
No, so I think what you're asking is if you want to be careful not to bump up against your Tabor revenue limits in your general fund by putting that money there and maybe categorizing it into your enterprise at the start, if that's how you want it.
Yeah. That's the conversation I want to have. Make sure we can do that before the money gets stuck in the general fund.
Manager Lewis, are you wanting to add in?
Yes, just to note that Director Loh is on the call, and we can make sure that happens. I will mention that we are a ways away from receiving those funds. So there is, according to the formula that the American Rescue Plan will follow, about $7.2 million that will come to Englewood as a result of that. Because we didn't have the revenue loss that many cities experienced during 2020, our funds will be more restricted to things like the specified items in the Act, which include water, wastewater, and broadband infrastructure. So we are preparing plans on all three of those areas to use that funding for that purpose, but we will make sure, now that we have that legal opinion about Tabor, we'll make sure that those funds, when they do come, don't get transferred into the general fund.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Just wanted to get that on the radar. Appreciate it. The other thing was I was looking at Tri-County. I understand May 15th, the state dial is going away and we're going to be on Tri-County's new dial. And under the new dial, it looks like if things don't change drastically, we're in the clear zone for, which means everything's kind of open at 100%. And if I'm misunderstanding that, then I'm happy for the correction. But if that's true, the thought that occurred to me was, why, I don't feel like there's any good reason to not go back to in-person meetings for our study sessions as well in June. I know we had talked about possibly just doing our regular city council meetings in person, but I don't see any reason not to do both or all of the meetings, especially since I would, if there is a risk associated with these meetings, I think it would be less with a study session since there's a lot fewer people who tend to attend those meetings anyway. So I don't know if we want to revisit that discussion, but I'm in favor of, once we go back to in-person meetings, and if we're in the all clear zone for Arapahoe County, I think they use hospitalizations as a metric there. We currently are right now. So if that's still true in June, then I think we should just go back to all of the meetings in person, including the study sessions at that point. So I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but I just want to get that on the table. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. No one else has their hands up, so no one else has anything. Is that true? All right. Well, then the next is city manager's choice.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one item, and that is to announce that today we did receive notification from the Department of Local Affairs, DOLA, that we're slated to receive the $45,000 in funding that we applied for in partnership with our some of our nonprofit partners that will provide emergencies. It's an emergency solutions grant from DOLA. to really partner with those nonprofits, specifically the Severe Weather Shelter Network, to establish some care facilities for people experiencing COVID as well as homelessness. And so we will be keeping you updated on how we are implementing that program. We have not received the agreement from the state yet for that funding, but expect to have it within the next 2 weeks or so. And that's all I have for tonight.
All right. In a city attorney, do you have anything for us, Attorney Sellers?
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify a couple of things on the what Councilmember Anderson said about the dial and everything like that. So the dial is actually gone. The state dial is gone. Tri-County adopted a simplified dial, but starting May 15th or May 16th, you will be in the clear. Arapahoe County will be in the clear. That's the way the current order works. So you will remain in blue for until that date. So and then everybody goes to clear. That's the concept within the Tri-County area. So, and then you won't have any limitations on indoor capacity.
It's all based on the hospitalization and everything else, though. So
yep, that's correct.
I hope we're there. Let's hope we are. All right. Anything else? No. Okay.
Mayor, you're muted.
So we are, sorry, we did do a special session, so we'll take roll call to adjourn. If it was just a study session, I'd adjourn us.
Member
Right.
Anderson? Oops, sorry.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Wink, want to do second?
Second, sorry.
And please vote.
So sorry. Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra?
Aye.
Member Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Mayor Olson?
Aye.
6 ayes.
And let the record show it's 8:47 p.m. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Have a good week, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.